Good evening. Welcome to Medical Mondays. I am Dr. Toyin Okwesomi. I'm a family practitioner, HIV specialist, and I treat people with addiction. I hail from Maryland, Baltimore, Laurel, Landover, Capitol Heights corridor. And tonight, we have an amazing infectious disease specialist, our very own Dr. Gertie Anyanwoke. Welcome. Before I go on to introduce her properly, I just want to say that we have a treat tonight. We have a physician who has a heart for people, a physician who, before COVID, was shy, would not come out before you as she's going to do tonight, to come talk or do anything like that, who faced her own practice and just do the needful there. But when she saw the pandemic, how it's ravaging people and how it's disproportionately affecting people of color, and how our people are so disadvantaged in education, she took it upon herself, not only to educate herself better as an infectious disease physician, who this is her forte, this is her scope. She's been out in the community, educating, bridging the gap, making sure that our population knows what needs to be known about COVID, so that we can do the needful to stay alive and to stay healthy. Dr. Gertie Chimeka Anyanwoke is a thorough and compassionate internist and infectious disease specialist located in Baton Rouge and Gonzales, Los Angeles. She did infectious disease specialty, a residency in New York. She's not only versatile in infectious disease, she also, as I said, active in the community, has been given multiple community awards, as well as being a member of AMA, ACP, and IDSA. She is the medical director of Infectious Disease Associates of Baton Rouge, as well as Baton Rouge Multi-Specialty Care Center in Los Angeles, amongst others. Right. She's the chairman of AMPA Louisiana chapter, as well as the chairman AMPA National Infectious Disease Committee. She's very involved in the Nigerian community and is currently the president of the United Nigerian Women Association, amongst other responsibilities. Back home in Nigeria, she's also very efficient, effective, and holds some titles back there. So again, good evening all. I give you Dr. Anyanwoke.
Hello, good evening. Thank you all for having me here. I'm going to launch straight into the PowerPoint presentation. Like I said earlier, I would like to present with two different slides. Starting from the first one, this is what I used to use to just introduce people to the COVID-19 and vaccination when it first started in December. So I'm going to quickly go through these slides. So first of all, I always try to give the anatomy of the virus. The COVID-19 virus has several features that may be able to be used to target drugs and to be able to break it down and stop the virus from entering the cells. So here you see the RNA enclosed in protein. This is the popular spike protein, and you see how this is round, and that shape is what is called the corona, and that's why where it got its name, coronavirus. This here is the lipid membranes, and this is very useful in understanding how the vaccine makes it into this cell. The life cycle, briefly about the life cycle. So you see right here is a coronavirus. I talked about the spike protein. There's also envelope protein. There's the RNA right here. This right here is the RNA. And then this is the nucleocapsid protein over here. And here is the receptor, the ACE2 receptor in our body. And so this ACE2 receptor is how the virus gets into our cells and our tissue. So once the virus enters through this ACE2 receptor, it goes through the process of translation, there's proteolysis, there's transcription of that RNA genome, and then there's RNA replication and packaging. You can see how it's packaging a new virus over here. These are the boarding, like spike over here and other components of the cells, and it's assembling it, and then after it assembles it, it becomes a whole virus and it's released out. And this is happening in quantum in our body whenever this virus takes place. So we're going to talk a little bit about the common questions we have in our communities about vaccine hesitancy. I may not be able to go through all of them, but during question and answers, anybody's free to ask me any of those questions. We hear about why is there so much vaccine hesitancy? What's a vaccine? How does it work? What's the process? Rushed? Is the vaccine safe? Were minorities included? Is the vaccine effective in all populations? What are the side effects? All that good stuff. So initially when the COVID-19 vaccine came out, CDC data on minorities and COVID-19 was clear on the fact that Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans at that time were about 4 times more to be hospitalized and nearly 3 times more likely to die of COVID-19 than white people. But it was so funny because it was more white people getting the vaccine, 3 times the rate the Black Americans were getting it. So that was concerning right from the beginning. And if you go looking at it today, it's still a similar process that's going on. And so what we want to ask ourselves is, why is that so? Racism in medicine, racism in healthcare and government policies is a known fact in America. We know that in the past, Black people have felt violated in the arena of medicine and science. We know about the Tuskegee experiment, Tuskegee syphilis experiment in 1932, where Black men were intentionally denied treatment, leading to morbidity and mortality. There's another example of the case of Henrietta Lacks, which they used her cancer cells during medical research. They did not inform her. They did not compensate her financially. It was later found out. In the present day America, Black people still face inequalities in healthcare. These are all the reasons why people don't seem to trust the government or the system. I want to touch a little bit on past work on messenger RNA vaccine. It's been at least 3 decades in the making, and that's what a lot of people don't know, because I hear people say, oh my God, how did they do that so fast? The technology has been there. It's been worked since 1990s. This particular doctor here, Dr. Kathleen Carrico, is very instrumental. Her project was to utilize messenger RNA technology to combat disease. At that time, she met with a lot of disappointments. She didn't give up. In 1990, they made that technology work in mice in the University of Wisconsin. They discovered that they had some problems, which included synthetic messenger RNA was unstable. And in that unstable state, it could lead to immune response with unintended risks to some patients. 15 years after that 1990 experiment, in 2005, they figured out the solution to that initial problem, and they tried to use the technology for Ebola vaccine. And then in 2020, we are all witnesses to 2020, what happened. COVID was really overtaking the world. And it was more like a case of preparation meeting opportunity, and they decided to use this technology to launch the messenger RNA vaccine for COVID-19. So that's where we are today. Also, it's reassuring that there have been a lot of minorities that have worked on this vaccine. This is Dr. Kizzy Colbert, who's part of the scientists in the NIH that worked on the Mrna vaccine. There are a lot of minority doctors, a lot of African doctors, a lot of Nigerian doctors that have been part of this process. I have the pleasure of serving in committees with them, including Professor Igo Ufotokun, who has been in all these CDC committees and NIH committees, the same one that Fauci is in. There's Dr. Obi Nedu. We're all in the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas Infectious Disease Committee. Dr. Obi Nedu is the program director for the infectious disease program at Oshna, New Orleans, and they were also involved in investigating the vaccine at the initial phase. There's Dr. John Nadi right here in Baton Rouge, works with Oshna, Baton Rouge, was also involved in as an investigator. There's a lot of Nigerian doctors. I'm just naming these few people that I'm in committees with that have been involved. There's also Dr. Adefuye, who was the past chair of the AMPA Infectious Disease Committee. He's in the pharmaceutical industry. He actually works with Takeda Pharmaceuticals, and they've been involved in monoclonal antibodies for COVID. So it's a lot of Black people that have been involved. A lot of minorities also have been involved. The issue, and people keep talking about vaccines. Vaccines have been around for more than 200 years. And until COVID, we all know that vaccines work. We got vaccines as children. Look at, for instance, in 1950 in Ireland, you had, these are the cases, you see as big as this purple bubble is, those were the cases of measles at that time. And this is 2019, and this little purple bubble here are the cases of measles in Northern Ireland. The difference between 1950 and 2019 was the fact that vaccines were introduced. Look at this case of rubella. At that time, it was 151. And in 2019, it was 1. Diphtheria was 0. Polio, 0. Pertussis was 165 compared to 3,612. These are proof that vaccines work. How do vaccines work? You give a small amount of a harmless form of a disease, and then the body makes antibodies to fight it off. Then if you encounter the disease again, your body is ready with the antibodies, so you don't get sick. You become immune to that disease. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the messenger RNA. This is the messenger RNA for spike protein of the coronavirus. Here, we get injected into our shoulder muscle, right? And once it's injected there, it has to go into the cell cytoplasm. So I talked about the lipid membrane of the coronavirus, right? And so in making that vaccine, they use tiny fat bubbles to enclose the messenger RNA. And I explained earlier on why that was so, because the problem is you had to enclose those messenger RNA, otherwise it will be destroyed and denatured before it gets to the actual cell where it's supposed to be used to stimulate that cell. It stimulates the cells by producing spike protein. And that spike protein now stimulates the body's immune system to produce antibodies. So a little bit about messenger RNA. We know normally you have DNA that's transcribed into messenger RNA. And so when you transcribe the DNA into messenger RNA, the messenger RNA is transcribed into amino acids. And you look at these amino acids here, each codon corresponds to one amino acid. And so you have one amino acid here, you have another amino acid, you have another amino acid. And these amino acids form polypeptide chains in between them. And these polypeptide chains folds and become proteins. Here is a messenger RNA. This is the 5' region, this is the 3' region. And right here, where you have the blue, is the core area where you have that messenger RNA function. Was the process rushed? Yes, it was an accelerated process because of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic in the whole world. So they had this stuff they called Operation Warp Speed. I just want to use this to show why not
no step was omitted during the accelerated vaccine process. So the typical process may take more than 73 months. Some of them might take 10 years. I want you to look at this. This right here, and this is 3 months here and 5 months here. These are the initial research and development phase and stuff like that. Okay, so then they do the first phase of the vaccine right here. So normally you have research and development here, then you do the first phase of the vaccine here. But these two was combined. Don't forget now, we have a lot of information about coronaviruses already. COVID-19 is not the first coronavirus. It is just a novel coronavirus because it is new. But we know some of the characteristics of other coronaviruses. Based on those other knowledge and based on the technology I talked about that has been in place for more than 30 years now, they were able to scale this process to the point where at the time they were putting down the research and development, they were already starting the phase 1 trials. What are phase 1 trials? Usually that's to check for the safety and some efficacy, at least to see if is it immunogenic. Does it produce the antibodies against what it's supposed to do? Is it safe? Does it cause damage? Does it cause harm? And then they try different doses. After they did this phase and they found out that it was safe and it was immunogenic, they got to phase 2 and phase 3. Normally, phase 2 will take the process like 21 months, and then you go to phase 3. In this circumstance, they didn't wait for all that time because we didn't have the time. So they combined the processes. They combined the phases. They started some people in phase 2, and once those people got to like 2 months, they started them on phase 3, and they just built it. So they did a combined phase 2, phase 3 phases. Usually here is when you start manufacturing, right here. But I want you to look at that brown line, started from here, right after phase 1. So the reason normally pharmaceuticals will wait to do it here is because it takes a lot of money to produce this stuff. They have to make sure it works first before they produce it. However, because of this COVID and the Operation Warp Speed, the government funded this vaccine process. And the government told the pharmaceutical companies, don't worry, we got you, we bring the money, we put it down, start producing. If it don't work, we lose. The pharmaceutical companies was not gonna lose. So they started producing this vaccine already because they had nothing to lose. And if it didn't work, they were going to junk it. And then here is the distribution. So this is why it's an accelerated process. No phase was missed. Vaccines, usually, large studies, maybe 4,000 to 5,000 people to test it out. I can assure you that no corners were cut. And you want to see how many people Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Janssen, Novavax, and Sanofi used for their vaccine studies. There were thousands, more than the usual. And there were a lot of people that were willing to go through this process. Were minorities included in the studies? Absolutely. And you can see here that you have about 10% of the people were Black people. You had about 26% of the people were white, Hispanic, and about 8% were Asians. What was the distribution by sex? You had 49% males and 49% females and 51% males. And a lot of women were of childbearing age. Sometime in that process, they got pregnant. And so that's why there were able to be some early data, because after they've had the babies, and this started April of 2020, they did not see any deleterious issues so far. Is the vaccine safe? Yes. And today we had good news that Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine has been given full approval by the FDA. That attests to its safety profile. So they went through rigorous process. And on top of that, it's no longer an EUA for Pfizer. It is a full approval now. And I know Moderna will be coming in a few weeks because they have to be in this phase for at least 6 months before the FDA can review the data, the safety protocols and profiles, and make decisions. Worldwide, today, as at August 22nd, which was yesterday, You've had more than 4.95 billion shots of the vaccine given worldwide. In the US alone, it's been 363 million doses that have been administered as of yesterday. Is the vaccine effective in all populations? Yes. For white people, it was 95.2. For Black people, it was 100%. For Hispanic, it was 94.4. And by age, you can see for greater than 75-year-old, it was 100%. Greater than 65, 94.7%. Greater than 55, 93.7%. 16 to 55, 95.6%. And by sex, it was 96% in males, 94% in females. So overall, it was the efficacy was good. There's been a lot of talk, mark of the beast, 666, those have nothing to do with this vaccine. It is unfortunate that some people have been inducing fear amongst members of our communities with baseless lies that could endanger our health. Because when people get COVID, it could be mild, they may not feel anything, or it could be serious or severe, or they could even die. So people should be careful. If you know that the information you're putting out there, you're not sure of it, don't put up false information. And they talk about the vaccine contain a microchip. It's not true. It doesn't contain any microchip. It's a false narrative being propagated by some misinformed people. This misinformation may actually become harmful to the health of members of our community if it prevents us from protecting ourselves and our families with the COVID-19 vaccine. So to be clear, there's no microchips in the messenger RNA vaccines. The hydrogen nanotechnology describes the technology which uses the lipid nanoparticles in keeping the mRNA more stable, like I described before. Lipid nanoparticles equals very tiny fat molecules. It has nothing to do with microchip. And then they talked about the government tracking us. So when Pfizer first produced its vaccine and was going to ship it out, they thought about how to ship it out because it needed to be in ultra low temperatures. So they wanted to make sure that the vaccines were maintaining those temperatures and that by the time they got to where they got to, it was going to remain in those temperatures for it to be safe to give to people. So what they did, you look at here, they put this thermometer, which had like a tracking device to it, to be able to track this package wherever it goes. This is dry ice. And then they put the boxes of vaccines in this box, and then put this box in this bigger box of dry ice with this traceable or tracking device that is also a thermometer. And so it tracks this package, not the content of the vaccine. There's no way the government can track us because we now receive this vaccine. What they tracked was the package and to make sure that this stuff was at a safe temperature. What are the common side effects of COVID-19 vaccine? Usually you get soreness, pain, swelling around where you get it. Some people might feel fever, tiredness, chills, headaches. I did have pain. I did have discomfort, back pain, stuff like that. They have myalgias. A helpful tip is when you have that, talk to your doctor about taking over-the-counter medication, such as acetaminophen and ibuprofen. You could apply a clean, cool, wet washcloth over the area to reduce the pain and discomfort around the area where you get the shot. People can also use and exercise their arm to reduce the comfort of the discomfort from fever. You can drink plenty of fluids and dress lightly. Are there serious side effects to the messenger RNA vaccines? Yeah, any vaccine, any medication can have side effects. But a lot of times, those side effects that are serious are very rare. So serious problems from vaccination can happen, but they are rare, like I said. CDC has learned of reports that some people have experienced severe allergic reaction known as anaphylaxis after getting the COVID-19 vaccine. And so an example is an allergic reaction that's considered severe when a person needs to be treated with epinephrine. Some people already carry EpiPen because they have such severe allergy. And usually that's why people are asked to stay wherever they get this vaccine for at least 15 minutes, because most times if anaphylactic reaction is going to happen, it's almost immediately. And that's why we're asked to stay and wait for 15 minutes so that if something like that happens, you can get a jab of an EpiPen and everything will be fine. What about the new strains that we're having? I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Delta strain after this. So is it safe for me to get a COVID-19 vaccine if I would like to have a baby one day? For some weird reason, some people have had it in their mind that it's not safe to give it to young people. That there cannot be anything further from the truth. It is very safe to give it to young people, people that are that will still be able to get pregnant in future, both males and females. There's currently no evidence that antibodies formed from COVID-19 vaccination cause any problems with pregnancy, including the development of the placenta. In addition, there is no evidence suggesting that fertility problems are a side effect of any vaccine, not just COVID vaccine, any vaccine. Now, there are some vaccines that when you're pregnant, we may not want to give it to you because they are live attenuated. That's a different issue. COVID-19 vaccine is not live attenuated, so there's no issue there. Will a COVID-19 vaccine protect me from getting sick with COVID? We know that there have been some breakthrough cases of COVID, even for people that have gotten the vaccine. But what it does is a lot of times it does prevent COVID, but even if you have a breakthrough infection, the symptoms are less. It prevents you from having serious illness. It prevents hospitalization and even death. So can a COVID-19 vaccine make me sick with COVID-19? Absolutely not. None of the authorized and recommended COVID-19 vaccines has any COVID in the vaccine. Like I said, the messenger RNA was a synthesized product in the lab. There's no COVID in that vaccine. So will the COVID-19 vaccine alter my DNA? I hope by now people realize that this was a fallacy. There is no way that it changes our DNA or interacts even with our DNA in any way. So messenger RNA vaccines, they teach our cells how to make a protein that triggers an immune response. The messenger RNA from a COVID-19 vaccine never enters the nucleus of the cell, which is where our DNA is kept. This is a cell, to give you an example. So this is the cell membrane. This right here are ribosomes. This is the mitochondria. This is the cell cytoplasm. And of course, this is the mighty nucleus. When the COVID-19 vaccine it gets injected, it fuses, when the lipid that is used in enclosing that RNA fuses with this lipid membrane here and deposits that messenger RNA in this cytoplasm. In cytoplasm, it uses ribosomes and other enzymes to produce spike protein. That spike protein now induces our immune system to respond to that spike protein. At no time does it go to the nucleus and interact. Now, we all know our genetic material is in the nucleus. If this messenger RNA stayed here and mind its own business, never went to the nucleus, how can it now change our DNA? We all did some, at least little biology in school. We should know that that is not true. It's not possible. So we have different types of vaccines, and I'm not going to enumerate them all. Right now, what we have is the RNA vaccines, which is the Mrna and Pfizer, approved in America, and the viral vector vaccine, which is Johnson & Johnson. AstraZeneca is also a viral vector vaccine, and also the Sputnik 5, the Russian vaccine, is also a viral vector. At this point, I would like to stop sharing here. I still have slides, but for the interest of time, I want to go to the Delta vaccine, the Delta virus, and talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to give COVID-19 update as Delta variant spreads. I want to talk a little bit about what are mutations, variants, and strains. So a mutation is a change in the virus's genetic sequence. They are extremely common. So far, we've had more than 4,000 recorded mutations in the coronavirus spike protein alone. Mutations arise when viruses make shoddy copies of themselves inside a patient. When we say shoddy copies, it's like if you go to plants where they are manufacturing stuff, some of them will come out not right. Those are considered shoddy copies. And so in making this virus, and it's replicating so fast, being that it's a simple organism, it can make mistakes in transcribing during that replication. And those strains that arise as a result of that mutation might become consequential. So what is a variant? A variant is a virus whose genetic sequence differs from its parent. And what is a strain? A strain is a variant with many mutations that significantly alters the behavior of that strain. So I like to give this example of the E484K mutation, which is seen in the South African and the Brazilian variants, and also the one of the New York variant. This mutation particularly weakens antibody response. There are other mutations, but I use this as an example. So let us talk about, remember when I was talking about the amino acids and the codons of amino acids that is produced? So say this 3 here is one codon, and you have GGU. So you have GGG, when it's transcribed, it has GGU here. So you have GUU, and here you have GUU. Over here, you're supposed to have GAA, which is supposed to be another amino acid. But then instead of G, you have AAA. You have produced an entirely different amino acid. And then you have GGU, GGU, UU, UUU. So effectively, this parent strain has changed slightly, albeit, but it is different now. Now, again, this is the parental strain. This RNA here, so take it out and put it here and then transcribe it. When you see these mutations that have happened here as a result of what just happened, what you now have is a variant of the parent strain because of this change in the RNA. Now, this change in the RNA now manifests in the virus as such. Therefore, this change in RNA has caused a change in the virus behavior. That is the difference between a parent strain and a strain as a result of a mutation. The threat levels, we have variant of interest, variant of concern, and variant of high consequence. And these are all, so the variant of interest is when you first notice it and you think like, okay, it looks like this particular strain is really behaving a little different. And then it becomes a concern when, like, we have data variant right now. I started out as a variant of interest months ago in India. And then once it started killing or like being so contagious, it became a variant of concern. And now I think very soon it's going to be a variant of high consequence if it's not already. So recently the WHO changed renamed the different strains. There's the one we used to call the UK strain, that's the B117. They renamed it to the Alpha. Then the South African strain, which was B1351, was renamed to Beta. The Brazilian one, which was P1, was renamed to Gamma. And the one from India, B16172, was named Delta. There are other variants that are variants of interest. They have not gotten to the point of variants of concern yet. The California one, which is B1427, B1429, is known as the Epsilon. And then P2, which is from Brazil, is Zeta. The one strain from New York that was B1525 is Eta. From the Philippines, we have P3, is now Theta. And the second one from New York, another one from New York, which was B1526, is known as Iota. And there's another one from India, which is B16171, that's known as Kappa. So I just listed the B117 from UK Alpha, the B1351 from South Africa. That one was found, I think was first noticed in May of 2020, is known as Beta. The one from Brazil, P1, is Gamma, and Delta from India, October 2020, now known as Delta. So let's talk about Delta variant, B1617.2. The Delta variant is been gaining ground. As at a few weeks ago, the data was that it had reached about 130 countries, if I'm not mistaken. And at that time, at the time they made this slide, the UK was ahead in terms of numbers, but right now the US have surpassed the UK, and it's changed the whole situation in America. This is a little old. This is more than a month old. These blue areas are known as areas where they've been verified variants that have been reported. These lighter blue areas here are where there's unverified reports of the variant, and there are some other areas that had not been reported. So should I be concerned about the Delta variant? We know that new data show Delta is different than past versions of the virus because it's much more contagious. Vaccinated people can get breakthrough infections of Delta variant and may be contagious. Vaccinated individuals represent a very small amount of total transmission. So getting vaccinated prevents severe illness. It prevents hospitalization. It also prevents death. It also helps reduce the spread of the virus in communities. I'll give you an example. You know, when we drive our car, we know that car accident is possible when we get on the road, right? So we wear our seat belts. We're wearing our seat belt not because the seat belt will prevent accident. It is that in case the accident happens, we're not going to be thrown out of the car, such that it might be an accident that we could have survived if we weren't thrown out and we hit our head and start bleeding and then die as a result. So that seatbelt we wear, even if you have an accident, it should most times keep you alive. That's really the idea here. It is not that vaccination is going to prevent all infections. It's that vaccination at least will prevent severe illness, hospitalization, and death. Unvaccinated individuals should get vaccinated, and they should continue masking until they are fully vaccinated. With the Delta variant, this is more urgent than ever. The highest spread of cases and severe outcomes is happening in places with low vaccination rates. Data show that Delta is different than previous ones, like I said before. And virtually all of the patients that are hospitalized and dying, 90-something% of them are patients that have not been vaccinated. In areas with substantial and high transmission, CDC reversed itself on July 27, 2021, and recommends that everyone, including fully vaccinated individuals, should wear a mask in public indoor settings to help prevent spread of Delta and protect others. CDC also recommends that community leaders encourage vaccination and masking to prevent further outbreaks in areas of substantial and high transmissibility. CDC also recommends universal indoor masking for all teachers, staff, students, and visitors to K-12 schools, regardless of their vaccination status. Children should return to full-time in-person learning as long as these conditions are met. Vaccination is the most important public health action to end the COVID-19 pandemic. Please, let's get vaccinated to prevent severe illness, to prevent hospitalizations, to prevent death. We need more people vaccinated. Vaccination coverage by county in the US, as of about a week or two ago, was ranging between 9% to 89%, although there's been an uptick in this Delta variant surge, because people are now seeing people they know that are dying. Because I had people before that said, I don't know anybody that has died. Well, I live in Louisiana. I have been attending funerals for the past how many weeks? And there's rarely anybody that will now tell you that they don't know somebody that died from COVID. In most areas, about half of the counties in the United States have remained below 40%, although this number is now ticking up. Areas of low vaccination coverage have rapidly increasing cases. COVID-19 cases have increased over 300% nationally from June 19 to July 23, 2021. And this has been driven mainly by the highly transmissible Delta variant. Importantly, while we are seeing case numbers similar to the wave we experienced last summer, there are over 70% fewer deaths due largely to the impact of the vaccines. Healthcare systems are being strained in many states with surging cases, imperiling providers' ability to deliver care not only for patients with COVID-19, but also those with other healthcare needs. For instance, if somebody has an accident on the interstate and they're trying to get them to the hospital, I can tell you right now, the largest hospital system in the whole of the state of Louisiana, where I am, do not have the beds. So think about it. What is going to happen to save that person's life? That person that just had an accident needs to get into the hospital ASAP to be helped. But because of COVID and the surge of COVID, there are no beds. In fact, I know that some healthcare workers, especially nurses, are refusing to even take on this task anymore because they feel like this is overwhelming. They also have families. If somebody is in diabetic crisis, you may not be able to get them into an ICU bed because there are none. There are actually people on waiting lists in smaller hospitals that cannot provide care for those people. These are all the stuff we're talking about. And this is why people should get vaccinated. People should protect themselves. We should maintain the mitigation measures to protect all of us. We are in a race against time to increase vaccination coverage before new variants emerge. We're talking about Delta variant. We don't know if the next variant is going to be worse. And the only way you can stop this is vaccinating people to stop the propagation and replication of this virus. We continue to have good evidence that our vaccines for COVID are safe and effective, and they provide protection against the variants that are circulating in the United States right now. Data also demonstrate that the vaccines are preventing, like I said before, severe illness, hospitalization, and death, and they are effective against the current Delta variant. Vaccination is the best way to protect you, your family, me, my family, and our communities. We continue to have good data, like I said, that to stop the spread of the virus and prevent strong new variants, we should get the vaccination. Once it's available wherever we are, we should wash our hands frequently. We should keep at least 6 feet physical distance. We should wear our mask. In areas where we can't wash our hands with water and soap, we can use hand sanitizers. A lot of my data came from the CDC. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come here and have this discussion. I welcome questions. Thank you so much, Dr. O.
Thank you very much. We so much appreciate you. That is a wealth of information. You started from the foundation and you took us right where we needed to be, where we are now. Thank you. I'm going to ask the first question. I cheat all the time. I ask the first question. So I want to ask a question about Nigeria. A lot of people in Nigeria, maybe Africa, say, oh, don't even believe COVID exists. They're getting sick and they're saying they have severe malaria and severe typhoid. This is the time, for the first time in history, that I've heard that. Some die, some make it, some have sequela. But then we got the vaccine. We were worried we won't get it. We got AstraZeneca vaccine. So they said some people in Nigeria, as well as India, started giving fake vaccines. I know you're very conversant with what is going on in Nigeria. I know that as you're fighting the battle here, you're also doing the same in Nigeria. So what's your take on that? And do you think there is data to know the people who got these fake vaccines, and if we can, retract back and properly revaccinate them?
So I know that NAFDAC was able to intercept the fake vaccines that they were sending to Nigeria. The case of Africa, Nigeria, Africa as a whole, it's a sorry case, I have to say. And so far, the 3.92 million vaccines that we got, the AstraZeneca, was from the COVAX program. COVAX was supposed to provide up to 20% of the vaccines, COVID vaccines that were needed in these low-income countries. And they have not measured up. It's not been enough. The richer nations, the nations with higher income have really guzzled a lot of it. So even the 3.92 wasn't enough. They ran out of it in Nigeria. Yes, there's a lot of vaccine skepticism. The same misinformation, disinformation we have here was actually swelling in Nigeria. But I don't believe in one size fits all. We have our problems in Nigeria. And every single time, every single day, I'm very thankful to God that the COVID did not hit Nigeria exactly the way it hit us over here. You see, I know people that have died in Nigeria from COVID, even family members, and close friends who are physicians that have died from COVID in Nigeria. But I say that to say that even though there have been some people that have died in Nigeria, it hasn't been as bad as it's been over here. But the misinformation, the disinformation is real. The case of Nigeria is that we look at our economy, look at the other problems that we have in Nigeria. You know, my grandmother used to tell me sometimes that the person that their house is burning cannot afford to be chasing rats. So if you go to Nigeria, some people would rather go out and work and risk and take their chances with COVID because they don't have food at home. Over here, when COVID hit last year, the government was able to help. They didn't help everybody, but they helped a lot of low income or people that are moderate income that have lost their income as a result of COVID. We don't have the same in Nigeria and most African countries. So we cannot use the measures that we're using here to, you know, as a yardstick for Nigeria. But having said that, we know our situation in Nigeria. And they were talking about they were going to start producing vaccine. To produce vaccine, it takes a lot, right? The government, it's multifactorial. How many education, how much education is going into the COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccine as a result of government doing it? Association of Nigerian Physicians in America, which I happen to represent, we at the beginning were in talks with the Federal Ministry of Health in Nigeria. We were doing like the COVID, the pillars and all that stuff with NCDC, the Nigerian Government Nurse Forum, with all the health commissioners in every state in Nigeria. We helped to provide them some resources. But you find a lot of issues. I'm not here today to bash Nigeria. I don't want to. It's not the purpose of this. But I'm very thankful that we don't have it as bad in Nigeria. There's been about 4.02 million doses of Mrna that was sent a couple of weeks now by the US to Nigeria. And as far as I know, as at this weekend, they haven't started sharing it. So even the logistics to share it is a problem. I know some people that got the first dose and didn't get the second dose of the AstraZeneca. And so now it's going to be an issue because now we have Mrna. They're going to get Mrna. I say they should take it if that's what's available.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that input. I was actually going to tell you, I'm actually, you know, just for our audience, I'm also a member of AMPA. You know, we belong to the same organization, but she heads the infectious disease task force, and they are the cutting edge of COVID and all of that in Nigeria. I was going to mention that the Biden administration gave Nigeria Mrna, but I was concerned because of the refrigeration. We need to have below 60-degree temperature to refrigerate Mrna. We know the instability of electricity. So I contacted some of our professors in Nigeria and they said, oh, that, you know, all the states now have the minus 60-degree refrigeration, and also that Mrna can be refrigerated at 2 to 8 degrees for up to 30 days. So my hope, and that they're using generating system also as backup and all of that, my hope is that they would educate people quickly and give the injections so that we don't waste them. I wish, though, that this administration, Biden administration, had talked to at least one of us. We are available for free, because I don't know if Mrna would have been the better choice for us. I think maybe Johnson & Johnson might have been better, where you get one shot and you are done. And you can also refrigerate at 2 to 8 degrees, regular temperature, regular refrigeration temperature. I think maybe we would have done better. But all in all, I hope that the Lord helps us in Nigeria and we do better. We have lots of questions here, and I want to, start asking them. Abby asked, can the FDA approval be trusted? And a follow-up question to that, she says, do we know the long-term effects of being vaccinated now that we have the FDA approval?
Okay, so the question is if we can trust the FDA approval?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a question also. If you trust the FDA on any other medication, and if your answer to that is yes, then the answer to that question will be yes. If you trust the FDA to provide approval for all the medications we take, antibiotics and everything else, then yes, you should trust the FDA. And why shouldn't you trust the FDA? It's human beings that are in FDA. Those people have families. They are members of the society. Actually, all the committees that you have people in at the FDA are all members of the communities. They have grandchildren, they have great-grandchildren, they have cousins, they have everything like us. Would they want their people to die? They also took the vaccine. Can they be trusted? They gave it to their families. Can that be trusted? So that's the answer to the question. Yes, you can trust the FDA because they are not there to play politics. This virus does not know which political leaning that somebody has. All it knows is that the people in FDA are there to look at the data, the science, and then when they get that fact, they put it out. So yes, I will trust the FDA. What was the second part of that question?
Do we know the long-term effects of being vaccinated now that the FDA has approved the vaccine?
Okay, so, and this is question I have heard people ask a lot, and so I have to calm down to answer it. Vaccines have been around for more than 200 years. Usually, when we get vaccinated, at most, you might see symptoms from that vaccine, maybe 2 weeks, at most, maybe 6 weeks. They have watched the vaccine being given to millions of people, and they have data ranging for at least 6 months. That's what you use in getting a full approval for all the other medications that you have. So yes, they have looked at the long-term side effects. They have watched them for 6 months. Actually, they have more than 6 months data. Don't forget that the first set of people that they gave the vaccine to during the trials were end of April of 2020. So they have at least, I would say, a year and 4 months data, and they're supposed to watch and follow those people for the next 2 years. So for the 2 years, so that will end in April of next year, or for some people, depends on the stage of the trial that they got into. So yes, there's been enough data to suggest that. I will say a little bit about the mRNA vaccine. So the mRNA as a synthetic product, when it gets to the body, think about, I usually give the example of when I was in medical school and hematology, I think it was a hematology exam, I used to cram. So when I cram it and I go into the exam, I will vomit it. And after I come out from that exam, 1 hour later, I may not even remember it. Yeah. It's gone. That is how the mRNA is. mRNA is like, you give it a message. That's why it's messenger RNA. You say, see this message, take this message and go over there and reproduce it. When it gets there, it reproduces that message. It's done with. That mRNA is done. And it's scavenged out of that cell. And it's done with. So it's scavenged like every other thing in the body. When the cells and everything else, gets scavenged and is wasted, it's put out as a waste product. That's it. So that the idea that mRNA will now come back and cause problems for us is really far-fetched. That is not to say that people cannot have side effects or that people cannot have allergies. Remember now, some people are born more prone to allergies. Some people eating crayfish, ordinary crayfish will cause them allergy. There are people that are allergic to penicillin. What we do as doctors is we find how do we help those people. I've had thousands of my patients vaccinated. So far, I have, until this last week, I had 2 cases. So now I have 3 cases. 2 of them are body rash all over as a result of them taking vaccine. And 1 was 9 hours after the vaccine, he felt like he couldn't swallow. Now, that's not an anaphylaxis because anaphylaxis usually occur very soon after you give it. But it's still a serious reaction. And let me tell you people, the truth of treating them was steroids. I have a patient who was worried because she's allergic to other medications. She's been my patient for years, so I know. She's allergic to meropenem. She's allergic to ceftriaxone. She's allergic to levofloxacin. She's allergic to penicillin. She's allergic to a lot of things. So she was worried about taking the vaccine. She was one of the holdouts. And I can proudly say that she took the vaccine maybe in the last 1 month. And we discussed her fears. What I did was I prepped her. I gave her some steroid. She went to take the vaccine. She came back boasting that nothing. She did not feel anything. Everything was fine. So it's discuss it with your doctor. So you guys can have, a plan on how to go about it. There are people that will be prone to reactions. If you have that concern, discuss with your doctors. There are ways to go about it. Thanks.
Thank you. So a question here is there any type of effect if you pre-medicate with some medication like Tylenol before being vaccinated?
I don't usually advise pre-medication with Tylenol, but I don't see the harm that it will do.
Thank you. I actually advocate that, but Tylenol, not NSAIDs, not ibuprofen, Advil, or naproxen, anything in that, because those can mute the response of the body to the vaccine because they're anti-inflammatory. So Tylenol is, because of that site, the injection site reaction. That's the reason for the Tylenol.
And I tell people, it usually takes, after you get the injection, it takes a few hours for you to start feeling it. If you feel like you don't want to wait for that, you can take the Tylenol. But I'm saying that as a rule, I don't tell patients first take it, If you want to, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But I usually tell them, just wait. When you start feeling this stuff, you take it. But I don't have anything against them taking it before.
Well, and going back to that question, your patient, it's very interesting that I had a patient today whose office is mandating that they take the vaccine. And she has allergies to so many medications in the past. So she's worried about, what happened the first week Pfizer was rolled out in London. Those two women who developed reactions to them and got into trouble, had to be hospitalized because they have severe allergies. And Pfizer came out on the Friday that same week that if you have severe allergies, don't take Pfizer vaccine. What I've seen though is I've seen a lot of my patients with allergies. I don't know, and I always tell my patients, they say severe allergies. I want to know the definition of severe allergies. Nobody has defined that to us yet. But all my patients who have taken the vaccine, allergies or not, have done well. And whether you're allergic to one medication or the other, this is another one. Until you get it, we don't know. And if you get it, if you develop reactions, chances are we have ways of mitigating that.
Yes. The biggest one will be the anaphylaxis, and there's EpiPen.
That's right. That's right. There's EpiPen. Yeah. So there's another question by the same person. Are we going to keep getting a booster dose forever? I just got my booster dose 2 days ago. That's
so I don't think we will keep getting booster dose forever. So certain vaccines, some vaccines you get 1 shot, some vaccines you get 2, some vaccines you get 3, and even some you get 4, especially the immunocompromised patients. With COVID, we don't know if we're going to be stopping at 3 or if, so what they're seeing now is that the effect seems to be waning. Would we need COVID shots, like influenza shot, is the question I was actually expecting. As for the boosters, I don't think the jury is out totally, but I doubt that after these 3rd doses, that we may be getting a 4th dose and a 5th dose and a 6th dose. They might as well just make it a yearly thing. But I think that once you get this vaccination, the fear that I actually have is the variant. If we have serious mutations, it may totally bypass the current vaccination that we have. That's really the biggest fear I have. So if the virus were not mutating the way it was mutating, I would be like, I don't think so. But because when it mutates and it changes characteristics, you really cannot predict. And so I think the jury is still out there, as in, are we going to be getting this stuff every year or not? I don't think so, but I'm not entirely sure.
If we keep going like this, I think so. And I'll tell you why. There's the lambda now and the epsilon. That the vaccine, it's postulated that the vaccines do not cover. So it's like the flu vaccine. Why do we get flu vaccine every year? It's because of mutations. People actually don't realize that. Mutations that lead to different strains. And there are many years that the vaccine we get for flu does not cover what we have that season, because the flu vaccine is started to be produced around March for where we're going to take in the fall, based on what the flu was the year before. So the jury is out, like you said, and I don't know why people are talking about this third shot. I've not heard anything from CDC. Have you? That we should go get the third shot, the booster.
So that's one of the good news about today, them having a full approval of the Pfizer vaccine. That may allow the CDC now approve a third dose booster shot. That full approval may make them allow that. But I think that they're going to come down to it, because if you look at it, Israel has been ahead of the whole world since this stuff started. So Pfizer was smart to make a deal with Israel. They supplied Israel, but Israel gave them a lot of data from their patients. So using those data, they are mining those data, and they're using those data, they're seeing how the levels of the antibodies are dropping. And they are calculating that by the 8 months mark, it seems to have dropped to a certain degree where they need to do a booster. That's the whole idea about the booster dose. We haven't gotten there in America yet. But if that data that Israel has, that Pfizer has from Israel is true, then we're going to get there soon.
Yeah. And what Israel does also is they actually test for antibodies after the second vaccination to make sure that one actually is immune. Because you can get the vaccines and not be immune. You may not mount enough antibodies like you should, but we don't follow up with antibody testing. In my setting, actually, my clinic, I actually do. I have my own little research on the side just to see how my patients are doing, because I'm interested in my patients doing well. I check their antibody levels. I had somebody who got COVID and then got vaccinated. Do you know that his antibodies is greater than 2,500? What that means, that's how it's reported, greater than, meaning the test up to just 2,500. What that means is not really clear yet, but time will tell. So much to still learn about COVID.
Yep.
But we have to stay safe. We have to stay alive to know what rolls out, right?
Yes, we have to stay alive to know what happens at the end.
Exactly. So I have some comments here. Somebody said your presentation is awesome. Another said, wow, thank you very much. So thank you. Really was an awesome, awesome presentation. So another question. Vaccines may be safe, but sounds like there will be lifetime jabs, as there will always be some sort of new variant. And I want to add a follow-up question to that. We've had coronavirus forever. Can you please comment on why now we have one that caused a pandemic?
That's coronaviruses in the past haven't really been this bad, and they cause the common cold. We have catarrh. You feel achy discomfort for a few days. You're fine. This particular virus is novel. It's new, and it came with certain characteristics that have not been seen amongst the coronaviruses. And it was actually killing people as a result of that. When I was presenting, I showed how it made its way into our cells via the ACE2 receptors. And so a lot of ACE2 receptors are also in the lungs. They're in other organs too. And once it makes its way in there, it seems to, in some circumstances, produce a particularly hyperinflammation It's a very hyper-inflammatory condition. That inflammation can produce damage to the lining of the blood vessels to the point where there can be blood clots. Those blood clots, I mean, you know, the blood is circulating around the whole body, can get to literally any organ, can get to the heart and cause myocarditis. A lot of, when COVID first started, one thing we noticed with the patients in the hospital was their CKs and troponins were elevated. So there was a lot of cardiology consults because they're like, it's affecting the heart. But it was the, it's just the fact that it was this particular new way that this virus was just causing different problems. Every organ, the liver, the kidney, the brain, even our skin. There were people that had petechiae. I had patients that had COVID toe. The toe was blue-black. It did not spare any organ. I had patients that had stroke as a result of COVID. And that is something that is not emphasized enough in the community, that COVID causes a lot of blood clots. Remember when we were talking about the Johnson & Johnson possibly causing blood clots? So if you looked at it at that time, it was 6.8 million people had gotten the Johnson & Johnson. And they had, I think they had 6 people that had had blood clots. And 1 person had died because they misread that blood clots because it happened in the brain, in the cavernous sinus. The way they treated it was a different way they were supposed to treat it. And that one of the patients died. But if you come and look at it in the bigger picture, right? If you say 6 people and you have 6.8 million, so you have perhaps 1 person in 1.1 million people that got the vaccine. Fast forward to COVID. So that would be like a 0.0001%, right? But COVID itself, so that is the vaccine, 0.001%, or let's say 0.003 or 4%, 0.004%. The COVID is 16% chances of causing blood clots. But the people are not afraid of getting the COVID. They're afraid of the vaccine. And the COVID is causing more blood clots. Even, I would say, being a woman is a risk factor for blood clots. As a woman, you don't have to take any medicine. Your risk factor for getting blood clot is like 0.025. It's higher than the COVID vaccine. Now, add oral contraceptive to it. Your risk go higher. There are people that are smoking up and down. The risk for them to get blood clot as a result of smoking is much higher than the COVID vaccine. They say they will not take the COVID vaccine because of the risk of blood clot, but they are smoking. It's, but as a physician that you know all this little stuff, it becomes like, okay, I need to calm down. I need to explain this stuff to people. That's what I would say about the blood clots, though, that we have more risk of getting COVID, blood clot as a result of COVID than from getting blood clot as a result of the vaccine.
Doc, what about the sequela when somebody has COVID?
The post-COVID.
The post-COVID syndrome.
Yes.
If you take the chance to get COVID, the brain fog, fatigue, numbness, paralysis, from COVID infection itself. How about that?
Exactly. I have a friend, a physician. She got COVID last year, May. As I'm speaking to you, she still has fogginess, memory issues. She still has headaches. This is more than a year later. So when people, there are people that got COVID that didn't even feel much. They didn't even feel anything. Any disease, especially when it's caused by virus, there's going to be a spectrum. The spectrum of the people that hardly felt anything to the people that will get paralyzed and die from it. Do we know where we fall in those spectrums? We don't know. Do we want to find out with our lives?
No.
I don't think so. That is why it is good to protect ourselves and our families. When we didn't have vaccine, we would say, okay, let's wear masks, let's do social distancing, physical distancing, let's wash our hands frequently and all. Now we have vaccine. So what I want, if there's nothing else, out of everything I say here today, if nothing else comes down to it, is the fact that when we don't get vaccinated, we allow the virus to propagate itself. When the virus needs a human being, the virus has nothing unless it gets to a human being. then it can now replicate itself using us. And it is that replication that is replicating itself that it can make a mistake. That mistake that virus makes in replication becomes a mutation. Sometimes it becomes consequential because that mutation now has, what is it called in Lagos, has become boro. It has now like surpassed even the parents of the COVID virus itself. The child has now become like, okay, worse than the parent. The way we stop it is if we get vaccinated, then we can slow this stuff down. Can we entirely eradicate COVID at the rate it has gone? I don't think so. But can we slow it down? Yes. We have to work together though. That is why we're out here every time doing this kind of talks, talking to our people to understand that we are in this together. We are in this together. I got a lot of stories to tell, but that's not what we are here for today. Maybe sometime when we will have like a happy hour, I can tell stories about, you know, my patients. And I live in the South, so you guys know what that means. This is Trumpian country. And so I have plenty of stories to tell. Wow. But the bottom line is that we should all encourage ourselves, our families, our friends, because we are in this together to take the vaccine, to protect ourselves and practice mitigations. Thank you.
Thank you. So a question from Mimi says, what do you think about no distance in schools with the rise of the Delta variant?
So I think like high school students are eligible to get vaccines. If they get vaccines and they wear masks, I really don't see too much with the 6 feet distance. The younger children, I worry about them some. The good news is that in the past, the virus didn't affect them that much. The bad news is that the Delta variant seems to have done more on younger children than the previous variants. And that's the concern. Now, you have to weigh the risk and benefits. We have kids, we had them at home. I had my kids homeschooling since 2020 March. And until this August, they've gone back to school. Both, all of them have gotten the vaccines. The youngest is 15. I'm telling you, I couldn't wait until they will approve that one that was 12 to 15 years old so that my youngest can get the vaccine. But as a parent, you start seeing it affect them psychologically. It affects them in so many ways. It even, some of them are not so good at doing this online remote thing at that age. So for the overall being of the child, you want to have the adults that are going to take care of those children be vaccinated, at least to protect those children too. But I would say if a child is immunocompromised, I wouldn't let them be back at school at this time if that child has a condition that makes them immunocompromised. Because even the adults that are immunocompromised, when you get the vaccine, that's something I wanted to say before. For instance, the hepatitis B vaccine, right? We regular people, we get 3 shots. People with HIV, people with immunocompromised, they get 4 shots. Why? Because when your immune system is down, it's harder to wake it up. It's harder to get a very good response to it. Some people are on immunosuppressants. What does that mean? It means they are on drugs that suppresses their immunity. Basically, these drugs tell their immune system, hey, don't fight. We are all friends here. Well, in doing that, when you give the vaccine, there might not be that much response, which is why if you see somebody that dies as a result of COVID and the person has been vaccinated, go and look at it very well. Most likely, they are immunocompromised. If they have cancer, if they are on chemotherapy that has suppressed their immune system, if they're on immunosuppressant. I have a patient who has lupus. She was vaccinated completely, but she got COVID. She's one of my patients that got COVID, that was vaccinated, that was very sick. And she told me, she said, Doc, if I hadn't taken that vaccine, I think I would have died. Mm-hmm. That is what the vaccine do. Mm-hmm. And she is immunocompromised. She has lupus. She is on immunosuppressants every single day. Mm-hmm. But she is alive today to tell her story. While I have 40-something-year-old, as I speak to you guys right now, I have 2 patients who are 40-something-year-old. Both of them are Black women in the ICU, intubated on the ventilator. I said I have many stories to tell. So I say all this to encourage us all. The vaccines are safe, they're effective. Let's talk to our family, ourselves. You want the materials, what I see on social media is people go and they bring some, for instance, they said it will cause pregnant women to lose their baby because they will develop blood clots as a result of the S protein. Well, they meant the protein S. So we medical doctors here, we have protein S. Protein S predisposes it, it causes blood clots and all, and it actually causes pregnant women to lose their baby, because of that protein S and the blood clots that it causes. Protein S, however, is not the same thing as S protein. S protein is just shortened for spike protein. So it's not the same thing. But people think that is what protein S is, S protein. It's not the same. And so it cannot cause you to have blood clots and have abortion of the baby. It's not true. It is not true.
So you must have heard about the video that is going viral now, that where an acclaimed Nobel Prize winner, I think is, said some things that are just so ludicrous at a Board of Education meeting, claiming that if you get the 2 vaccines, you're going to die within 6 months. And if you get the 3rd one, you're definitely going to die. And it didn't stop there. If you're a woman of childbearing age, he said you will be getting your fetus aborted in the 3rd month if you get the vaccine. We do know a woman in New York, though. I think it was last year. I'm sure you would have heard about her, who decided to get the vaccine shortly before she delivered. I think it was weeks before she had a baby. She was pregnant. And at that time, they said, the vaccine is open to pregnant women if you choose to get it. It was not recommended, but if you choose to get it, you'll get it, they'll give it to you. She had the baby and the baby was immunized to COVID.
Correct.
Did you hear about that?
Yeah. That's one of the first reported case of the baby actually came out immunized.
Exactly.
I think in Mississippi, this past few days, a 2-year-old baby died from COVID. And my youngest that I've treated is a 2-year-old, got COVID. I had a patient who had symptoms that were COVID-like, and I sent her to go do the test. And then she couldn't go because as she came out, her baby passed out, fainted. They rushed the baby to the hospital. It was COVID. And that's a young child. So there's no harm in protecting the baby coming out. And they have not shown any deleterious effect that the vaccine would have on the baby.
No. So Abby says, very knowledgeable presentation. Thank you. And Taiwo asks, how effective is monoclonal antibody in infusion?
So monoclonal antibodies are supposed to be given early. It's not for people that are really admitted in the hospital. It's to prevent admission. So when we're giving vaccine, we said we are asking it to wake up our immune system to produce antibodies against the COVID. So monoclonal antibody is basically antibody that has been produced, like as if our body was going to produce antibodies to fight the virus. So if you give it early, you have that antibodies fighting the virus and preventing you from getting really sick. So that's like a shortcut. However, it cannot last in your body for a long time because why? Your body did not produce that antibody. It is an infusion you get. It's almost like if you have anemia and they give you blood transfusion. At some point, your body too has to produce the red blood cells, and so that your body can maintain and keep going, because you cannot be getting transfusion all the time. So monoclonal antibodies are very effective, especially if they're given in early COVID infection, to prevent hospitalization and the case getting worse and even death. However, if you get monoclonal antibody, you can't take the vaccine for 90 days after.
Thank you so much. Abby, are you ready for this one? I have to sit straight for it. Are you ready?
I'm ready, whichever one.
Okay. So Abby says she wouldn't trust any charitable vaccines from the West to Nigeria or any part of Africa. Whatever the local scientists come up with will serve us better. She also says, my answer to any Western medication is no, sorry. Comment, please.
I don't know how many medicines we produce in Nigeria. It's a lot of things I think we import.
Scientists will come up with.
And it will be, to be honest, it will be wonderful. It will be wonderful if our scientists will just produce our own, so that we will not be depending on the West. We have a population of 200 million people in Nigeria. If at the rate of 2 doses per person, not 3 doses, 2 doses, that means we need 400 million doses of the vaccine in Nigeria. So far, we have 3.92 million from COVAX program, and now we have 4.02 million from the United States. All together, we don't even have 8 million doses. 8 million doses will only take care of 4% of Nigerians. That means if you bring 100 Nigerians, you will get only 4 people that will get the vaccine. We have enough room. What is stopping us from producing our own? It will be nice. Now, let me say this about trusting the West and any help that they give, charitable program. You see, the West understand what's going on. Let us not forget, where did the COVID come from? Where was the COVID first? Was it not China? It came from China. But look at how it has literally brought down the economies of the superpowers. So the West cannot sit down and say, oh, I finished vaccinating my people. Well, you people take care of yourself there. The West has an obligation to do charity, if that is what you want to call it, to Africa and other low-income countries, because we are in this together. If they don't do that, and the virus is raging in Africa, can they shut their borders? As I am sitting down here, a lot of us are African Americans. We are Nigerian Americans. Can they stop me from traveling to Nigeria? And then if I bring it down here, even if I'm protected, does that mean every person I meet at the airport is protected? And if you transmit it to one person, that one person will transmit it to maybe usually it was like 2 to 3 people. Now the Delta variant, you want to transmit it to like 5 people, 1 person. It will catch like wildfire in America. So after vaccinating their whole people, if you have a superior variant in Nigeria and they did not help Nigeria, they will still be fighting this fight forever. So they will be wise to do charity in low-income countries. And for those of us that say that we will not take those charity, what are our alternatives? If our alternative is that, no, we are going to sit down and die, I don't think that is a good alternative. I hope that answer, or at least that responded to your question.
Thank you very much. I think that was well handled. So another question says, what advice will you give to a patient who has a history of blood clots, knowing the side effect of the COVID vaccine is blood clot? It is. Also, after suffering a full-blown infection of COVID, should you take COVID vaccine? What makes COVID infection different from others where you get natural antibodies? So there are 3 questions here.
Okay.
The first one is, what advice would you give to somebody who knows they have history of blood clots, knowing the side effect of the COVID vaccine is blood clots? So I'll leave you to answer that one first, and then I'll throw the second one to you.
So if you've had a history of blood clots, you have to weigh the risk and the benefits. If you were to take the vaccine, what are the risks? What are the benefits? If you don't take the vaccine, what are the risks and benefits if you get COVID. I just said that the vaccine at most maybe 0.003 or 0.004% chance of getting blood clots. But if you get COVID, it's 16%. I hope that sank in. So if your risk of getting COVID is low and you decide that you don't want to take the vaccine, at least do mitigation. Because some certain things are going to be on person by person basis, your comfort level. As a physician, I will advise you to take the vaccine. But at the end of the day, you are an autonomous person. You have to make those decisions for yourself. But in making those decisions, what I will advise you to do is consider the risk versus the benefit. The risk of not taking the vaccine is that you will risk getting COVID. If you get COVID, it will be worse blood clots than if you had taken the vaccine. So that would be a choice that you will have to make.
Thank you. Also, after suffering a full-blown infection of COVID, should you take COVID vaccine?
Yes. Usually I advise my patients to wait for like 2 weeks after the COVID, then they go take the vaccine. However, if they got monoclonal antibodies, I advise them to wait for 90 days before they go and take it. And also those ones that got like plasma, you know, I advise them to wait for 90 days also.
So what makes COVID infection different from others where you get natural antibodies? It's not different.
It's not different. It's not different. So in the vaccine, in producing vaccines, they're different vaccines because they all have different mechanisms of working, the different disease processes, and the way our bodies respond to it. There's pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics. So there are some vaccines that the natural antibody you produce, the natural immunity you produce is actually lifetime. So it's probably better than the vaccine. And conversely, there are some others that the immunity that you get from the vaccine is actually better than the natural infection. For COVID, we don't know that much yet. But what we are beginning to see is, anecdotally, at least for me, it looks like the vaccine is giving a little bit more protection than the natural immunity, natural antibody that's produced when somebody got full-blown COVID. Why do I say that? I have had some patients who have had COVID multiple times. In fact, someone very close to me, although her whole family, they are Trumpian, she has got COVID now for the 4th time since last year.
Sheesh.
For the 4th time since last year. I have had a patient, I think I had a patient who had COVID at the end of November. By the beginning of January of 2021, she had COVID again. I am yet to see that many patients that have taken vaccine get COVID and be that sick. I still think that getting COVID, natural infection, and natural immunity gives you some protection. I actually believe that. And I think I'm one of the doctors that will advocate that if somebody already got COVID, maybe we shouldn't give them, like when we're giving 2 shots, maybe we shouldn't even give 2 shots. Maybe we should just give 1 to further boost their immunity. But there's nothing wrong with giving them the 2 shots. However, the data is beginning to look like the vaccine is doing more protection than the natural infection. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you so much. I think I want to chime in there because I've done a little bit, like I said, in my own corner with my patients. So what I've seen is that when you have COVID, you will develop antibodies, like any virus, okay? We've seen that also with MERS and SARS. COVID caused MERS in Asia caused SARS, this a few years ago. There were epidemics in Asia. And in that experience, they saw that depending, I can't remember if it's MERS or SARS, the antibodies in people who actually got infected lasted for a year in one of them. In the other, it lasted for up to 3 years, meaning that it's 1 to 3 years. Then what? Now, with my patients, I've seen some patients that got COVID like in October, November last year. They would have antibodies like 190 something, 140 something. But my patient, one of them who got COVID, had antibodies 100 and something. And I know that at that time in April, the antibodies were reported up to greater than 250. He has underlying medical problems, and that puts him at risk of dying if he's to get COVID again. So I told him to go get the vaccine. He did. And I rechecked his antibodies after his 2 shots, like I think 4 weeks after his second dose. His antibodies was recorded as greater than 2,500. Just compare that to what his natural antibodies produce, 140 something or 90 something, compared to greater than 2,500. So, like Dr. Anyanwoke just said, it doesn't look like the vaccine confers better immunity, and your natural immunity would wane. The immunity of the vaccine too, like we've seen in Israel, would wane. How long would it take in us Black people? Because I saw what you showed. Do you know that we're 100% protected in one of the slides you showed?
Yes.
People of color.
Yes.
We're 100% protected. So I wonder, time will tell as we look at our population compared to other populations. But I totally agree with you that the vaccine confers better immunity, whichever way we slice it. So Dr. Ashby is here, and she thinks that we are headed to yearly boosting. It's a guess, but she guesses we will be doing yearly boosting just like the flu shot. And Dr. Cap also agreed that it's going to be yearly. So I don't bet. Geez, I would have loved to bet, but I don't bet. To see where we go there. So Dr. Ashby also commented that immunocompromised providers and colleagues in Sarasota have already gotten their booster doses. They got the 3rd one. Just like you said, that immunocompromised patients should most likely get the 3rd one. And Abby came back again and said she's in agreement that they may make it yearly vaccine like the flu shot. A yearly one, sorry, typo, okay. So Tawa said, thank you very much, Dr. Anyanwoke, you are great. What a great presentation, fantastic, thank you. Oh, people are really, really enjoying this. Okay, so Abby says, what do you say to those that have been taking ivermectin? Have you heard of some people being given placebo jabs also? She asked. 2 questions.
Okay, so the placebo jabs that I know of was during the studies because they have to give placebo. That's how you compare. The people that get placebo do not know that they get placebo. Even the people giving the jabs do not know that they are giving either the actual vaccine or the placebo. They're not supposed to know. That's why it's called a double-blinded controlled study. Because all the people are involved, everything is identified exactly the same way. You don't know which one is placebo and which one is real. They have a computerized system and they have another board that is where they now, plug all those numbers because they use numbers to give those vaccines. So you don't even know who it is and whatever. And so they de-identify the whole process. It is totally blind. The people giving the jab, the people receiving it, do not know which one they get. So yes, those are the areas where you get jabs. As for this COVID vaccine, like if I go to say, I'm going to go get COVID vaccine, somebody give you a jab, that could be criminal, because you're here thinking you got the vaccine and here you are, you did not get the vaccine, you can actually put yourself in danger as a result of that. So no, I don't know of anything like that outside the setting of research. The ivermectin question is something that has come up a lot of times when I've given talks in the past. It became a big thing when a pulmonologist here in America, took it to Congress.
Dr.
And
Pierre.
yeah, and it almost became a political thing. Like, okay, one party will support this one, the other party, once the other party is not for this, the other party is for it. And I was looking at it and I was laughing, I was shaking my head. There are arguments to be made on both sides. The studies he was quoting was actually tiny little studies done in different countries, different areas, different locations. So they put them together as a meta-analysis and they analyzed that data as if they did that study, with the same parameters, with the same procedures and policies. That wasn't so. At the time, though, we had little knowledge about things. So whatever you can put out there that will help save life, you want to do something. And so I get the fervor with which they did that. That meta-analysis, in fact, I am a product of the University of Lagos College of Medicine. And one of the small studies that were done on ivermectin was done at University of Lagos. So let me talk about that one. They used 36 patients and they divided it. They divided it into 3 groups. The group that took placebo, then they gave a group 6 milligrams, and then they gave another group 12 milligrams. And they would do like 94 hours, 2 times. And they came out and they said that the group that took 12 milligrams did better. So they recommended that dose. So as any doctor here, that if you read research journals or you want to criticize a study, peer review is what we call it. 36 patients total for a study like that you're going to use the decision to make far-reaching decision on treatment and prophylaxis of patients. It's not done. It will never be accepted anywhere in America. It shouldn't be accepted in Nigeria. It shouldn't be accepted anywhere else. Now, think about it, 36, and you divide them into 3 different groups, the placebo group, the 6 milligram group, and the 12 milligram group. That means you have average about 12 patients in each arm. It's a non-starter. You can't use that study. So when you don't have data to back it up, we can't recommend it. That's the truth about the ivermectin. Now, I know that some people are using it in Nigeria. And I know some people that used it and still got COVID. I talked earlier about my patient that had lupus. She's on hydroxychloroquine. She got the vaccine, yet she had the COVID. She's on hydroxychloroquine because of her lupus. So I remember when COVID first came last year, I was one of the doctors treating the patients with hydroxychloroquine. Because at that time, we didn't have anything else. We didn't have anything else. In theory, though, in medical school, go and look at the textbooks. They did say that chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, they should be able to work and kill viruses like coronavirus. In theory, in test tube. But human beings, we are not test tube. In human beings, you have multiple organs, you have tissue, you have different processes going on. Something that may work in test tube may not work in the human body. That is what we found out with the chloroquine question. They actually put it out there. They actually did it. I remember discussing with other doctors in the hospital. I said, there's no sign that this thing is helping any of these patients. I did not see any sign. This was before they came out with their results. As doctors, forget doctors, anybody that does whatever you do, and you're a professional that does that stuff, right? You know what works and what doesn't work. I'm an infectious disease doctor. I treat HIV patients. I treat patients that have AIDS, that are almost dying. They have already quarter to die. And you can bring them back with the drugs and they will live a normal life. Yeah. It works. You can see medicine where it works. This one, it didn't work. So what are we supposed to do? Continue to give people the medication that does not work? Or tell them the truth that this doesn't work and let's find something else that will work? Let's be honest about this stuff. I would say that, right now, I think there's a study that's going on. Part of it is in Brazil and I think another country. They're doing studies on the ivermectin. I haven't seen the results come out yet. It's been months that they've been doing it. Hopefully the results will come out soon. So we'll know one way or the other. And I know that they enrolled about thousands of patients in this study. So it's going to be a robust one. So I think I'll wait.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I actually, like you, I treated patients with hydroxychloroquine, but I think it may work better before they become hospitalized when they come to you. In the outpatient place, you know, more research needed to be done there. I also prophylaxed lots of people, thousands in Nigeria with ivermectin because we had nothing.
Yes.
When Dr. Pierre gave his testimony, I ran with it and prophylaxed thousands. I got in touch with the health commissioners in Nigeria. I actually flew to Nigeria because I was worried about that country. We didn't have vaccine in sight, nothing. And this guy presented before the Senate, oh, I prophylaxed, and even treated some with COVID, early COVID, with ivermectin and got results. Also started a research, a better research than you're talking about. This research at University of Lagos, they didn't even dose it right. You have to dose ivermectin by weight. So what is 6 milligrams? Who would that treat? So I don't know, I can't even comment on that because that's not even the dosing. So there's a study that was underway. I'm still trying to get results. I think
it was 6 milligram per kg. It was 6 milligram.
Oh, 6 milligram per kg. Yeah. Okay, that makes better sense.
Yes.
Anyway, so as we, medicine changes, and as we do research and get answers, things we do today may change tomorrow. I say it all the time, that the only thing that does not change is the word of God, the Bible. Everything else, science, it changes. Look at even blood pressure. We changed the criteria. We lowered what normal blood pressure should be when we saw that through research, people actually do better, protect their organs, better. So things change as research changes. Encouragement that I'll give everybody on this platform tonight is don't be rigid in your ways. Let's move with the research, what we know. God is the one that gives us the knowledge in minuscule forms. And as he gives it to us, we disseminate the information. We are not establishing care with anyone tonight or anytime on Medical Mondays. We are communicating scientific facts, medical facts, so that you'll be more educated and be better able to make decisions pertaining to your health and your care. So, Dr. Anyanwoke, hear this. Someone said, they love your energy. You can be my professor any day. I enjoy your lecture, is what they said. That's Agnetha.
Thank you.
Somebody else said, great presentation. Thanks for all the info. Thanks so much, Dr. Anyanwoke. Enjoyed every bit of this. And another question though. Can being vaccinated prevent you from having another disease or cure some other diseases? In essence, can COVID vaccine cover some other diseases? I think is what the question is.
I don't think we have any data right now to show that that's what happens. I remember when I got my first shot, I had a first shot on the Tuesday. The weekend before, I'd been complaining of pain in my knee. And when I came back, my children were like, Mommy, how do you feel? This was in December. I'm like, I don't feel the pain again. But, since then I felt my pain again. So, I don't think we have any data showing that the vaccine covers other diseases. Who knows?
So Hannah, Dr. Hannah said, you should please come back again. You've got to come back, because as we get updates on COVID, you've got to come back.
It will be my pleasure. It will be my pleasure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So another person said, can the vaccine, not COVID, be transmitted through bodily fluids such as semen, sweat, saliva? Is it found in skin cells?
It's actually found in semen. It's found in feces too. So the thing is that they have not been able to successfully prove that when it's found in feces, it's able to infect, other people. I think the jury is out on that one. But it's found in feces, it's found in semen. It's found in bodily fluids, yeah.
Well, the vaccine, I think, is what they're asking.
Oh.
Not COVID itself.
Oh, okay. So the vaccine.
The vaccine, not COVID, be transmitted through bodily fluids such as semen, sweat, saliva, and is it found in skin cells?
Oh, I don't know that there is any data for that, any vaccine at all. I thought you were talking about COVID-19 itself. The vaccine, it's something that your body immune system produces in your body. And it's going to be hard for you to, it's just like when they produce the monoclonal antibodies, right? That's basically what your body should produce, the antibodies. So they give you the monoclonal antibodies, but after 90 days, it's all gone. It's not there anymore. So that should answer the question. If you even give it to somebody else, number one, it's not going to be enough to protect them. Number two, it's going to disappear after. So I don't have any data.
Actually, the person has a follow-up question, and somebody is helping also, like mother to child. We know that has happened, but that's a different scenario. And the person had a follow-up question that, so if one spouse is vaccinated, will the other spouse get the mRNA?
I doubt it. See, the mother-child is a different thing. Remember, the placenta is right there, implanted in the organ of the mother. So it's intertwined with the mother's blood vessels too. So that's a different matter than husband and wife, So even, I don't think that if your spouse has the messenger RNA vaccine, then it will now automatically protect the spouse of that person. I don't think there's any research or data like that.
What about breast milk? Do we have the data?
Not too much data right now. Not too much data. It's considered
out.
Yeah, the jury's out on that one. Not too much data. In fact, they just came down on initially they were like, talk to your doctor about, pregnant women. Now they've come out full-fledged saying, yeah, pregnant women should get the vaccine because they have enough data now. And that happened in the last 1 month.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for that info. Miss Maureen raised her hand. She has a question. So please unmute and ask a question.
Yeah, what about remdesivir? Is that a monoclonal? How does it work? Thank you, my sister Gertie. Very good.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Actually, is that the same anti-Maureen?
Yes, it is.
She's been on before you.
Are you
very eager to hear you talk. Yes.
So remdesivir is not the same as monoclonal antibody. It's actually a broad spectrum antiviral medication. It's not the same as monoclonal antibody. Monoclonal antibody works as a like the way an antibody will work if your immune system were to produce that antibody. It's just that it's a temporary fix. Remdesivir itself is actually an antiviral that actually gets to certain parts of the cell and try to block the virus from penetrating and causing problems. So it's different from monoclonal antibodies. And it's given in patients that are hospitalized, and mainly to shorten their hospital stay. It hasn't been shown to help with survival per se, and that's why the WHO kind of backed out of it. We still use it in America because you need the bed space. So if this medicine is going to shorten the patient's stay in the hospital by 2 days, You need those 2 days to send the patient home and put another patient on that bed. So that's why they're still using it in America, to shorten the hospital stay, because it tends to shorten the amount of viral activity since it's an antiviral.
Fantastic. Auntie Maureen, is your question properly answered?
I think she's muted.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So there's another question that says, could it be the vaccine causing the variants?
No, wow.
Okay, because I had to join my Wafi sisters and brothers. No, the vaccine cannot cause the variant. I showed how the variant happens. The variant happens as a result of replication, has nothing to do with the vaccine. The vaccine, actually, if all of us are vaccinated, it will help stop the variant replication and mutation. You know, the vaccines cannot be the ones. It's so warped. And I know that this information is out there on social media. See, well, when you were introducing me at the first time, I'm not a shy person per se. I'm social media shy. I don't like to be on social media before COVID, but I have become somebody that is on social media because of COVID. And I find that social media can be very good in disseminating information. Now, it is whether the information is good information or bad information. With COVID, there's been a lot of good information out there, but also a lot of bad information. Some of them I will call misinformation. Some of them I will call disinformation, when it is intentionally given to people just to not let them. These are people that are anti-vaxxers. They hate vaccines. They believe certain stuff. It's okay. But to make up stories is what I don't get. I don't get it. Where? A lot of us did biology in high school. Let's forget medicine. We did biology. Even my children, they be telling me about mutation, you know? And so they do biology in high school. Just from that little knowledge of biology, you didn't understand what is a mutation. So how would the vaccine cause the mutation? It's the viral replication that causes the virus to sometimes change. Like I said, they make shoddy copies of themselves. And those shoddy copies can either have no consequence or may become consequential. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Ajay said something very, very profound. He said, the best advice is to be religious and love one another by taking the vaccines where possible. Now, God has made this available to us to get better at beating the evil virus. So take the vaccine. I think it's very good advice that he gave here. And Dr. Caprice wrote in the chat box that NIH published an article 8 days ago about protective antibodies appearing in the milk after maternal vaccination, which may protect the infant against COVID-19. It may. The jury is still out, like Dr. Anyanwoke said. Professional organizations and government health authorities have recommended that COVID-19 vaccines be offered to those who are breastfeeding because the potential benefits of maternal vaccination during lactation outweigh any theoretical risk, including mothers with diabetes. Comments, Doc?
I totally agree. I totally agree.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for this excellent presentation. Before we actually, as a group, acknowledge you, I want to take us to the Medical Mondays moment. We give awards, a token, a gift to anyone who brings 10 people or more to Medical Mondays. We call them our VIPs. And our champions are those who bring 20 or more people. We've had a couple, Dr. and Dr. Ajay, week after week, most weeks, winning this award. And again, they won this week. But as they do most of the time, they've decided to give this gift to Mama Abundance. Mama Abundance, are you here to accept this? The gift this week is going to be the shea butter sham from one of our sisters who makes this shea butter herself to soothe in different ways. So she's going to contact the awardee and see what they would like, what their preference would be in order to give them the gift. Miss Abundance, Mama Abundance, are you?
Yes, ma'am.
Kindly on me. Oh, fantastic. Oh, Mama Abundance, you are always here.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. O.
This is
God
a
bless you.
very soothing gift. Amen. It is a gift that you would enjoy. It's homemade, and we will contact you so that
Thank you so much.
enjoy.
Thank you, Dr. and Mrs. Ajay.
Thank you, Doc.
Congratulations. You're welcome.
And I want to shout out to Miss Sandra. She joined us for the first time. Miss Sandra, are you there?
I am so sorry. I had to put you on mute. I have a lot of kids around here.
We love to
Hello,
hear them.
everyone.
We love to hear them. It's okay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Welcome to Medical Mondays.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I saw our delegate, Andrea Harrison. She always hides. Dr. Ashby. They all here on ground today, as usual. So thank you so much for attending Medical Mondays. So at this time, did we enjoy our presentation tonight? I promised you that we were going to have the best COVID education we have had so far. And I think Dr. Anyanwoke has delivered. So if you please all unmute, let us appreciate her and say thank you in our
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
God bless you.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you.
you.
all.
Come back, okay?
I will.
Thank you so much. This was fabulous. You know, Dr. Ashby actually commented again in the chat box. She said, thank you so much for the timely reminder to vaccinate. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
So without much ado, unless we have any other questions, because we don't leave any question unanswered, we will say ciao. Good night.
Bye.
Have a blessed week. See you next week with Dr. Ajagbe.
Good night.
Dr.
Good night.
Ajagbe is coming back next week to give us some, dental, hearts, all mixed up talk. It should be an awesome one as usual.
Amen.
So see you next week, 7 p.m. And to access this program tonight and all the other ones from March 1st, go to the YouTube channel, Medical Mondays with Dr. O. There are many Medical Mondays. You do Medical Mondays and it will spill a lot out. You have to add with Dr. O, and you can look at this program again or refer people if you want to. Okay? Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.